Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, Executive Editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with yet another of the mid-price Decca opera reissues series things, which may or may not still be available, but I'm just reviewing all of them for the record. So we have a nice, wonderful library of performances, and they'll be available some way or another if you can't find them now. This is the last of the three Colin Britten opera productions. The first two were Peter Grimes and The Turn of the Screw, and he also did A Midsummer Night's Dream, one of the most neglected of all of the Britten operas, probably because it's based on Shakespeare, and you know what happens when English composers do Shakespeare. Oh my God, Shakespeare has been such a curse for English composers, often, and as often as not. Why is that the case? Well, it's the case because, as here, Shakespeare's operas are far too long to set as operas, unless you really attack the text and chop it down to size. Well, chopping it down to size naturally incurs the wrath of all of the British literary critic people, because every English person I have ever met from England who dabbles in music, and music critics particularly really would rather be literary critics. So they all think that they're experts on Shakespeare, who is their poet. He's their poet. And so they can tell you whether the treatment of the libretto was correct or incorrect. You know, it's one thing to laugh at like Verdi's Otello as arranged by Boito or Berlioz's Shakespeare stuff. You know, they're foreigners. And foreigners mess with Shakespeare, and if they get laughed at, they don't care because they have their own foreign audience, and the foreign audience doesn't give a damn what the English think about how Shakespeare is being mangled or mutilated. I frankly don't give a damn how Shakespeare is being mangled or mutilated, because the purpose of the opera is to do a good opera. It's not to do justice to Shakespeare. Get it? I just want to be clear, and we all need to be clear about that. It's absolutely irrelevant what happens to Shakespeare in turning it into an opera. The only thing that matters is, does it make for a good opera? And the rules of opera are rather different than the rules of spoken drama, as you may know. There's not a lot of time for introspection, because introspection in opera means length. It means it gets very, very long. You've got lots of words. When you set lots of words to music that go at the pace of music rather than the pace of normal speech, it all stretches out. So anyway, Britten and Peter Pears arranged this from Shakespeare's original. They did a pretty good job. You know, they cut it down. My problem with the opera, and I do have issues with the opera, is as an opera. I mean, as an opera itself, it's a difficult opera. It's a difficult piece to turn into an opera because it's a fantastical story that doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't have a lot of like human interest. And the fairies are kind of irritating. And Britten did his fairy thing. You know, the fairy thing means using countertenor voices. And Puck has to be a boy soprano that's a spoken role accompanied by a trumpet and a snare drum. And frankly, the Shakespearean English in a modern opera is tough. I would rather listen to it in French than have to try and figure out what they're trying to say in Shakespearean English. That's the problem with Shakespeare operas. They almost always defeat the people who are doing them if they're doing them in English. You don't want to be faithful to Shakespeare. No. If anything, this is too faithful. But some of the music is really fun. It's written for an enlarged chamber orchestra with like lots of percussion. Yay. And it has some wonderful numbers. It has some funny things for the rude mechanicals, for Bottom and those people. And it's got some lovely lyrical stuff for the humans. But the point is, let's see, how long is this sucker? They get through the whole thing in, it's 148 minutes and 20 seconds, which means 2 hours, 28 minutes and 20 seconds. And it still seems too short. Go figure. It just needs to sort of expand into itself a little bit better. Not because I know the original. I'm talking about the self-evident music things. You've got so much stuff going on in this opera. I mean, it's a huge cast. Oberon is Brian Asawa, the countertenor. Ugh. I mean, not that he's bad. It's just that the concept is like, ugh. Titania is Sylvia McNair. I spoke to her about the time that this was coming up. I had to interview her. She's a very nice person. She really was. Like most American opera singers, she spent a little too much time in front of her diction coach. I remember calling her up and, I said, "Is this Miss McNair?" And I hear, "This is she." And I felt, I felt like saying to her, "Oh my God, where are you from? The Midwest? Come on, honey, lighten up." But once we got to talking, she was just fine. And then we had, let's see, Puck is Carl Ferguson. "Oh no, fair spirits." The trumpet thing. It's like, ugh, okay. Theseus is Brian Benatine Scott, and Hippolyta is Hilary Summers, and Lysander is John Mark Ainsley, and Demetrius is Paul Whelan, and Hermia is Ruby Philogene. Okay. And Hermia and Helena is Janice Watson, and Bottom is Robert Lloyd, and Quince is Gwyn Howell, and Flute is Ian Bostridge, and there's like just lots of people in here. So many people. It's a big ensemble cast. They all sing very well. Colin Davis conducts beautifully. It's lovely. But whether you like the opera or not, it's going to depend on, first of all, whether you like the play. And second of all, knowing the play, as we all kind of do, or some of us do anyway, how well they have managed to reduce it to operatic dimensions. I find it at best partially successful, as I said, but it has its moments. The libretto is available online with this CD, theoretically. You can tell me if it's still there. Anyway, so there you go. Turn of the screw. Nice stuff on Decca, formerly Phillips. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. That's it. Thanks for joining me. Yes, that's who you were joining. Take care.